This is America's Roundtable from Washington, D.C., a weekly radio program with leading voices and thinkers representing the academia, business, media, think tanks, and the political arena. I am Joel Anand, your co-host, joined by Natasha Sardorch, economist and co-founder of the International Leaders Summit. Vivek Wadhwa is the author of The Immigrant Exodus, Why America is Losing the Global Race to Capture Entrepreneurial Talent, which is based on his new Kauffman Foundation research. This new book has been placed on the Economist magazine's Best Books of 2012. Vivek Wadhwa is Vice President of Academics and Innovation at Singularity University, Fellow at Stanford University, Director of Research at the Center for Entrepreneurship and Research Commercialization at the Pratt School of Engineering, Duke University, and Distinguished Visiting Scholar, Halle Institute of Global Learning, Emory University. He started his career as a software developer and gained a deep understanding of the challenges in building computer systems. Vivek Wadhwa is an entrepreneur, and as a result of his vision, Forbes.com named Wadhwa a leader of tomorrow by, and Fortune magazine declared Relativity one of the 25 coolest companies in the world. In February 2012, the U.S. government awarded Wadhwa distinguished recognition as an outstanding American by choice for his commitment to this country and to the common civic values that unite us as Americans. Wadhwa is a regular columnist for The Washington Post, Bloomberg Businessweek, and Forbes.com. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on America's Roundtable, Vivek.
Welcome, Vivek.
Thank you for having me.
All right, based on your important research, could you kindly elaborate on the contribution that immigrant entrepreneurs and innovators have made to America's economy, and specifically in the startups when looking at Silicon Valley? And why are immigrant entrepreneurs and innovators critical to America's economic growth and intellectual capital?
From 1995 to 2005, 52% of the startups in Silicon Valley and 25% nationwide were founded by immigrants. These people typically came here to study, and roughly 13 years after they came here, they ended up starting companies. They contributed hugely to the economy, something like $52 billion in sales. They employed nearly 500,000 workers. So that's the good news. Now, this is something I had documented in 2007, and then we started looking into some of the bigger issues. And we realized that there's a backlog building, that these are people who came in, 10, 15, 20 years earlier. The newer crop of people that were arriving weren't able to get visas, and we updated our research, and we found that the numbers had dropped from 52% to 44%, which means that we're choking off innovation in the tech sector. Now, it's important because a lot of the greatest companies in Silicon Valley have been founded by immigrants. You see immigrants in all of the companies in the tech sector. Many of them, in fact, I would say most of them have been founded by people born abroad. They've given America a huge advantage. They've uplifted its competitiveness. They've improved its economy. They've helped automate, increase the productivity and efficiency of American industry. Really, they've made America what it is. This is a land of immigrants, and the trend has continued over the last few decades with skilled workers who start tech companies.
Indeed, you've clearly mentioned the important role that immigrants have played in America's economy. We certainly recall even the great innovator Nikola Tesla, who came from Eastern Europe, and you've also indicated the significant number of immigrant entrepreneurs from India, and we were just amazed by the specific statistic of companies that were founded in Silicon Valley by Indian Americans.
That's right. I mean, Indians constitute less than 1% of the U.S. population, about two-thirds of 1% of the U.S. population. They start about 7% of its startups nationwide and 16% in Silicon Valley. Those are mind-blowing numbers.
It is. It truly is. In your research that you've done, what are the factors that are contributing to the drop in immigrant entrepreneurs? And what are some of the factors that are actually repelling some of the people that we truly need, the best and the brightest, to come to America?
There are two factors at play here. One is our stupidity. I hate to say this, but we just don't have enough visas for these people. We haven't opened the door wide enough to let them in. So there are about 1 million skilled immigrants right now who came to the United States legally over the past 2 decades. They're working for American companies. They're contributing to its competitiveness, and they're stuck. They're waiting for green cards. They're waiting for permanent resident visas, and there aren't enough visas. We only issue 140,000 visas a year, which means that these 1 million people will have to wait decades. And it's compounded by the fact There's a 7% per country limit. So if you're from Iceland, you're fine. If you're from India, you could wait 15, 20, 25 years for a green card. Now, the problem is that this is happening at the same time that the economies of India and China and Brazil and other countries are rising. In other words, there are great opportunities back home for these skilled workers. So what's happening is that these people work for the same company over and over again, do the same job, get tired and frustrated, and then they start hearing from their friends who've gone back home about how wonderful it is there, how well they're doing, the fact that they're enjoying a better quality of life back home than they enjoyed in the United States. So the people over here suddenly begin to think, well, why are we putting up with all this? Why should we be trapped in limbo? Why should we, be second-class citizens? Let's go back home. And they're trotting back home.
Right. And Vivek, what would your advice be to the administration and legislators regarding the immigration policy?
We just need to expand the number of visas. It's that simple. I mean, I can, get technical over here, but it's really a numbers game that fix this mess. Now, here's what the problem is, that both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, agree it needs to be done. However, the Democrats also want to solve a bigger problem, the problem of unskilled immigration, of the undocumented, illegal workers that came to the United States. The Republicans will have no part of providing amnesty to the 10 or 12 million that are here illegally. So the Republicans are happy to get a deal done to fix the problem of the skilled immigrants, but they are not ready to negotiate on the unskilled yet. So the Democrats are holding the skilled hostage for the unskilled. It's a really ugly situation in Washington, D.C. The result is that American innovation is suffering. We have hundreds of thousands of people who are suffering because of the petty politics that our politicians are playing. And the loss is to America, because these people, when they go back home, they're taking the jobs with them. They're taking the innovation with them. They're taking the ideas with them. And they're starting the companies back home.
Interestingly enough, this particular week, we've been focusing on what's happening in Washington, D.C. in regard to the budget deal. And it seems that there's so much focus on raising taxes, but not much focus on what it will take to grow the economy. And what you've just laid out very clearly is the importance of job creation, of attracting entrepreneurs and skilled workers that will certainly contribute to America's growth rather than the other way around. And in your book, Vivek, you share the story of an Indian couple who had to return to India. And instead of creating jobs in America, they are now creating jobs outside of America. And for our listeners, I think it would be so important for them to hear their story so that they understand the faces behind these statistics.
They're not one. There are tens of thousands of couples like that. These two graduated from two good universities in the United States, and they met each other, fell in love, and got married. And then they started one company which started generating $1 million in revenue, and then they started another company. So they were, employing Americans. They were paying $250,000 in taxes. So everything was great until they decided to go back for the visa processing. They were required to go back home to update their visa. And the American government decided that, well, we're not going to let you back in. There's some technicality with the way you fill out this paperwork, which means that you can't get back in the United States. They've been in India for years now, battling the immigration department, trying to get a visa to come back to the United States. In the meantime, they've employed several Indian workers, and they're now focused on the Indian market. So what could have been, 5, maybe 10, maybe 50, jobs in the United States are now in India. These people are paying taxes to the Indian government, not to the U.S. government. I mean, it's just mindless for us to be, chasing these people away. So I have a few examples in the book, but I have several more examples on my website, www.immigrantexodus.com. Story after story of amazing human beings, the type of people that any country would want to attract there, not only from India, from all over the world, from Germany, from Switzerland, from Australia. These people come over here, they want to create jobs and boost our economy, and we won't give them visas. I was talking to one venture capitalist yesterday, who was telling me that one of the entrepreneurs that he found most promising was held up by the immigration department when she returned here and was sent to jail because of technicality with her paperwork. I believe it was an Israeli entrepreneur that we're talking about, but it was just bizarre the way we're treating these skilled foreigners who want to be helping us.
It is interesting that you've mentioned about this particular story of a individual, a lady from Israel that was placed behind bars because of her technicality. And when we think of immigration reform in America, it is very sad or very unfortunate to say that, but broadcast media has a tendency to focus on the images of politicians going to the U.S.-Mexico border and posing for a photo opportunity while holding a pair of binoculars. It is supposed to show that politicians are trying to do something. And what are some of the basic steps that we could take to move this debate forward and truly begin to reform the archaic immigration process here in the United States?
Well, first of all, we need a startup visa, which means that anyone in the world who wants to start a company that employs American workers can come to the United States. The funny thing is these people bring their own money with them. They're typically very well off. They're very entrepreneurial. Anyone who comes here should be allowed to come and start a company here, provided it employs Americans. If after, let's say, 5 years, they're hiring 5 American workers, we want this person to stay forever because we want them to do more of it and now employ 500 American workers. So we need a startup visa. And then we need to fix this log jam we have, this backlog we have. Right now, there are only 140,000 visas with a 7% per country limit. Remove this 7% per country limit. It's a remnant of the 1950s or something. It goes back decades when we were trying to exclude the Japanese, and it was really silly legislation that was passed a long, long time ago, which doesn't apply in this age anymore. Remove the per country limit, and then expand the number of permanent resident visas. Instead of 140,000, let's have 500,000 skilled workers here. Why do we want fewer doctors, scientists, engineers, highly skilled workers? I mean, we want more of them, not less. If I had my way, I would allow 1 million a year to come in here and boost our economy, because along with them, they bring their savings, they bring more capital, and they create jobs for Americans. We'll make America a much richer, livelier place if we bring in people from all over the world who are highly educated and highly skilled. Indeed. And then there are other problems. For example, if you're on an H-1B visa, which is a temporary work visa that allows you to work here, your wife can't work. This sounds bizarre. In some states, the spouses of H-1B workers can't even get driver's licenses because they can't get social security numbers. It may seem like a strong statement to make, but women in Saudi Arabia have better rights than the wives of H-1B workers in the United States. I don't know how we let the situation be like this, but how can we be treating human beings as second-class citizens and subjugating their spouses to being at home looking after children? But that's what we do. We need to fix this stupid policy immediately. Indeed. And then we have the graduates of our universities. As many as half of the master's students in some of our most advanced engineering and science programs are foreign born. When they graduate, encourage them to stay in America. Give them permanent resident visas. Let them staple a green card to their diploma if you want, or put some conditions on it. I don't want it to be too easy to just for anyone just to come here and study and stay, but whatever it might be, let's figure out a way to encourage students to stay over here. And these are sort of things we need to do, which would cost us zero. I mean, the amazing thing over here is that everything I'm talking about doesn't require billions of dollars in government funding or new programs. It simply means rewriting some paperwork and opening the doors a little bit wider, and we'll have tens of billions of dollars worth of investment coming into the United States. We'll create hundreds of thousands over time, millions, maybe tens of millions of jobs for Americans over time.
Indeed. In fact, you're very familiar with the EB-5 program, which to a certain degree has been presented as a way for entrepreneurs to bring in funds and begin an endeavor in an area that is economically depressed. But apparently, from what we gather, there has been a lack of a policy memo for over 12 months after it was promised, a refusal to provide for communications between adjudicators and petitioners for over 3 years now, and a resulting slowdown of the process that is causing both lack of economic opportunity and jobs. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of promised solutions to the problems, but we're seeing sort of a bureaucracy that is not moving forward to resolving some of these issues.
In one of your articles, you mentioned that entrepreneurship has been at the core of the American economy for decades, a key ingredient of the American dream. You continued by saying ethos is now spreading around the world quickly. Anyone, anywhere can now start a company that positively impacts their local communities and perhaps the world. What do you see today as major obstacles to entrepreneurship in America?
The problem in America generally, and now we're getting beyond immigration. The reason why people don't become entrepreneurs is that they're afraid of failing. So there's often a cultural issue. And then they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to become entrepreneurs. And then they can't get seed financing. These are all things fixing the culture takes time. This is why Silicon Valley is the most entrepreneurial place in the world, because the culture here is of accepting failure, of encouraging people to try over and over again until they get it right. Labor cost is no longer a factor, because when you have robots, when you have automation, labor cost is practically zero. So we can now start bringing it back over here. Now, the question is, what jobs are we bringing back? We're not going to bring back the old line manufacturing jobs, which employed thousands of people who did menial work. The new jobs are going to be in assembling robots, in managing computers, managing production lines, in servicing machines. These are much higher paying jobs, but they're fewer jobs. So workers here could make $50, $60, $70 an hour in relative terms. However, there are fewer of these jobs and they require higher education. So, which is fine for the United States, because the U.S. has a highly skilled workforce which can be re-educated. Chinese, right now, we keep assuming that China will keep rising and they'll do really well, take over the world. False. The bigger threat is from an imploding Chinese economy. So there are many advantages that America has. There are many amazing things that are happening. There are many risks we need to be aware of as well.
And, just residing in California and seeing also many businesses leave California because of very high corporate tax as well as other taxation that is typical for California, do you see some improvements that could be done? And also there are many companies that are actually now overseas and then having huge amounts of cash abroad and are reluctant to bring it back to the States because of the very high corporate tax rate, because of the double taxation, because they already paid their dues in the countries of origin where profits were generated. So how can we change all these policies?
Well, this is where our legislators have to earn their keep. That yes, lower taxes are better than higher taxes, and if we keep raising taxes, we'll bankrupt this country. We'll bankrupt our people. That's not the way to go. We need to be smarter about the way we do things and trim the right programs and incentives and so on. This is something which is not my area of expertise. I don't know much about tax policy, but there's no doubt about the fact that a lot needs to be done over here.
Vivek, you were mentioning in an earlier presentation about the Chilean story. We've actually followed Chile's success very closely. Some of our very good friends were part of the cabinet that implemented reforms, and one of them, Mr. Buki, was their finance minister. And we were just very intrigued by the way in Chile is embracing some of these reform ideas. And you were given an opportunity to provide some advice to Chile's cabinet. And could you share with us how America's loss is becoming Chile's gain?
Well, the Chileans had tried, as the American government, our policymakers keep talking about clusters. They sort of seem to think that they're the magic bullet. I've called clusters the modern-day snake oil, because governments can't invent clusters. They can't invent innovation. Only people can. So Chile had asked me for advice on how do we build an innovation economy. They had tried building these clusters, and all of them failed. So I said, look, give up on the old way. Let's try an experiment. Right now, America is being foolish in the way it's losing its immigrants. Amazing people who want to be in America and contribute to success, but the American government won't let them stay. Why don't you take advantage of that? Why don't you invite them here to Santiago and make them feel at home, provide them with the office space, provide them with the infrastructure, and just bring them in. So the government said, well, how do we know they'll come? I said, they'll come. They said, well, they were worried that only the poor, people from poorer nations like Nicaragua would come to Chile. I said, no, if you set up the right environment, you'll find anyone from the world wants to come. And they said, let's sweeten the pot here. Let's give them some money. Let's give them $40,000, $50,000 to come here and start their companies here. Now, in selecting people, the only thing you want to look for is you want to look for people who really seem smart and motivated. Bring them here, let them do their magic. The government was puzzled because they didn't know what would happen, but they took my advice and they tried an experiment. They brought in 25 companies. They spent $1 million And they were amazed at what started happening there, that these 25 companies, these 25 entrepreneurs started hiring locals. Every foreign entrepreneur hired 1.8 locals. They started networking with the locals, teaching them about the ways of the West. They started making friends. They started building bonds. They started bringing new thinking to Santiago. And before you knew it, it was such a huge success that the government decided to scale it up. Right now, there are about 200, 250 entrepreneurs there from all over the world. And Santiago is buzzing with entrepreneurial activity. The Economist actually wrote about what they call Silicon Valley in a cover story, and it's considered to be one of the greatest successes in the innovation sector. That just by bringing people and smart people in, you're seeing innovation happening. You're seeing a buzzing entrepreneurial ecosystem in Santiago right now.
Yes, it is interesting to see how other countries are taking advantage, as you've mentioned, of America's lack of leadership in some of these key areas. And last week in Washington, D.C., and according to media reports, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives passed the STEM Act, a bill that provides U.S. visas for foreign students in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And basically, in essence, it would be 30,000 visas would be allocated annually to qualified candidates, allowing them to remain in the U.S. after graduating. It's mentioned that this program would be invaluable to the U.S. economy if it did not come at a cost. And if it passes in the Senate, the STEM Act will eliminate the diversity visa program, better known as the Green Card Lottery. What are your thoughts about it, and is 30,000 visas enough, or should we aim higher?
No, it's by no means is it enough. By no means do I like the idea of eliminating the diversity visa. However, at least the Republicans are trying. I mean, this is low-hanging fruit. My attitude is, let's approve it and then go on to approve the startup visa, and then let's approve the DREAM Act, and let's approve a farm worker bill, and let's start fixing problem after problem. So, sadly, President Obama said that he doesn't support it, and it's most likely that this will fail in the Senate. So here we have the Democrats essentially playing games and not doing what's right for the country because they want it all. They want all or nothing. So here the Republicans have done something very sensible, and I encourage our leaders to just put their differences aside and start approving what they can. Let's pick the low-hanging fruit and start fixing the problems of this economy.
In fact, Vivek, you probably are very aware of the fact that the medical community has expressed concern that in the next 15 years, there will be a lack of 150,000 doctors. We're returning back to the whole issue of immigration because in our country we have some 50,000 plus Indian American physicians that over the past few decades have come and have contributed significantly to both the medical community and to research as well. We see that there's a lack of 150,000 doctors that are slated for the next 15 years. And do you see this concern being discussed and debated in the arena? And do you see any solutions even in this specific field?
It's the same issue. Why not just open the door and let the foreign doctors come here and help us? Let them go to the small towns. Let them do the magic that they've done, and help America, heal itself and get stronger. It's so simple. I mean, people abroad want to come here. We won't let them.
Thank you so much, Vivek, for joining us on America's Roundtable, and we would certainly encourage our listeners to visit his website, as well as the book that he just came out with, The Immigrant Exodus, Why America is Losing the Global Race to Capture Entrepreneurial Talent. And just as a word, Steve Forbes has written about it and says, talk about hitting our economy when it's down and when we're doing it to ourselves, as Vivek Wadhwa's shocking new book illustrates. Vivek's timely book should wake Washington up to the destructive folly. Thank you so much, Vivek, for joining us.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you.
This is America's Roundtable. Visit us at americasrt.com. Follow us on Twitter at americasrt. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Like and share.